Hello there, and welcome to Dream Myths. There existed a secluded crescent of white sand at Antheon, a place where the very air was a silent testament to a forgotten god, where the breeze hung unnaturally still and the colors of the landscape seemed to possess an almost feverish intensity. It was a place where life itself seemed to hold its breath. It was to this unsettling shore that a young, spirited fisherman, Glaucus, arrived to take stock of his day's efforts. A bountiful catch now laid upon the sand. As he began to sort his prize, he witnessed a phenomenon that defied all natural law. The lifeless fish, once so still, began to twitch and writhe, their bodies pulsing with an unseen vigor. In a moment of divine grace or maddening confusion, they flopped and slithered, returning to the embrace of the sea from which they came. Frustrated, bewildered, and deprived of his sustenance, Glaucus knelt and in a fit of pique bit into a nearby reed, swallowing the honey-like sap that bled from its stalk. The world seemed to lurch as his heart began to pound a frantic, furious rhythm against his ribs. His simple clothes, once a second skin, now felt as though they were constricting him, and he tore them from his body. The fine white sand scorched the soles of his feet, and in a desperate plea for relief, he dove into the cool blue water. He did not sink. Instead, he found a profound and exhilarating liberation. His lungs, once bound to the air above, now drew breath from the very depths of the ocean. He felt not the weight of the water, but the lightness of flight. He was a creature reborn. The sacred sap had remade him. His sun-bronzed skin gave way to an emerald hue. A beard of rusty green sprouted from his chin, and his hair, now long and flowing, was the color of the deep sea. His shoulders broadened into a Titan's frame, and his legs, once for walking on land, fused into a powerful, scaly tail, the ultimate testament to his new identity. He had become a merman. The sea gods Oceanus and Tethys welcomed him as one of their own, and he spent his days in a state of pure euphoria, exploring coral-strewn caverns and befriending sleek dolphins. He would often share in the convivial feasts of the Nereids, the 50 daughters of his new patrons, nymphs of the sea with hair the color of sea foam. Among them was Scylla, a nymph of unparalleled beauty, a creature so radiant that Glaucus's heart, once lost to the sea, now belonged to her alone. Consumed by a love so potent it bordered on obsession, Glaucus approached her with a tender smile. But Scylla, a nymph of the rocky shoals, a creature of wild, untamed nature did not return his affection. She did not comprehend his new, magnificent form, and with a shriek of terror, she fled from him, retreating into the cool shadows of a hidden grotto. Glaucus was heartbroken, his joy replaced by a tormenting despair. But his love was not one to be easily defeated. It was a fire that burned fiercely and demanded to be seen. He decided he would not give up. In his desperation, he sought out the most powerful sorceress in the ancient world, Circe, daughter of the sun god Helios and the goddess of the ocean, Perse. He journeyed to the island of Aea, and on his knees, he laid bare his soul and begged her for a potion that would ignite a similar love in Scylla's heart. Circe, however, had long since grown weary of the foolish pursuits of mortal men and their foolish hearts. She, with her own formidable power and a beauty that could rival the dawn itself, saw in this desperate merman an opportunity for a new love, her own. She offered him her heart, her kingdom, her very essence, but Glaucus, blind in his unyielding desire for Scylla, refused her. A slow, venomous rage began to simmer within Circe's breast. She saw his rejection not as a tribute to another, but as a deep, personal slight. With a dangerous smile, she agreed to help him, promising a potion that would change Scylla, a promise she intended to keep in a way he could never imagine. She gave him a small leather pouch filled with dark, gnarled roots, their form as twisted as the sorceress's own heart, and instructed him to sprinkle them into the secluded pool where Scylla would often come to bathe. Unaware of the treachery, Glaucus returned to Antheon. He found the tranquil pool where Scylla would come to rest, and, with a hopeful heart, he released the contents of the pouch into the water. The moment the ugly black roots touched the surface, they shrieked with a sound like tearing fabric, their malevolent energy spreading like a stain, corrupting the crystal clear water. Scylla arrived shortly after, oblivious to the profane act that had just transpired. She waded into the pool, her lithe body surrendering to the tainted water, and in a moment of utter calm, she drifted to the shore and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. She awoke not to the gentle lapping of waves, but to a low, guttural growl. As she opened her eyes, she was met with a waking nightmare. 6 monstrous, slavering dogs encircled her, their jaws open and their eyes burning with a cruel hunger. She tried to flee, to escape this hellish new reality, but she found she could not. The scream of pure horror. She discovered that the beasts were not separate from her, but were a part of her, a grotesque hydra of flesh and teeth writhing and twisting from her waist. Miles away, on the island of Aea, Circe's chilling laughter echoed across the sea. The potion had indeed changed Scylla. She was no longer a nymph of grace and beauty, but a horrific monster, forever bound to the rocky shores, a terror to all sailors who dared to pass. Her 6 ravenous dogs tore apart any and all who came near, a perpetual reminder of the foolish love and vengeful wrath that had created her. And Glaucus, now a creature of the sea, slowly forgot the pain of his unrequited love. The sea, with its boundless depths and endless mysteries, was a balm to his wounded heart. He rediscovered his old cheer and swam off in search of new adventures, his memory of Scylla fading like a distant echo, never to return to the shores of Antheon, where a love born of desperation had birthed a timeless tragedy. In the pantheon of Greek mythology, where the lives of gods and mortals intertwined with devastating frequency, few stories illustrate the peril of divine attention more poignantly than that of Io, the king of the gods. Zeus, a deity of formidable power but with an insatiable appetite for mortal women, was a constant source of strife for his wife, the formidable Queen Hera. In his endless pursuit of new love, he ensnared the beautiful priestess Io, a woman of such grace that Zeus was compelled to make her his own. Knowing all too well the fiery jealousy of his wife, Zeus attempted a desperate ruse. As Hera approached his dwelling, he transformed Io into a stunningly beautiful white cow, hoping to conceal her true identity. But Hera, a goddess of unmatched cunning and with eyes that missed nothing, saw through the transparent deception. Feigning admiration for the cow, she asked Zeus for it as a gift, powerless to refuse. Without revealing his treachery, Zeus reluctantly gave her Io. Hera, now the captor, did not take her chances. She placed Io in a secluded, gloomy cave and assigned her a fearsome guardian, Argus Panoptes, a monstrous being whose name literally meant all-seeing. Argus was a cyclops, but unlike his brethren, he had 100 eyes scattered across his body. This grotesque and terrifying feature was his most formidable asset. Even when he slept, at least 2 of his eyes remained open, a perpetual vigil that ensured no one could ever approach the cow without being seen. Zeus, witnessing Io's miserable existence, was filled with a rare pang of guilt He summoned his clever and mischievous son, Hermes, the messenger of the gods, and tasked him with a seemingly impossible mission to rescue Io by slaying Argus. Hermes, the god of cunning and thieves, understood that a direct confrontation was doomed to fail. He could not outwit an opponent who was always vigilant, so Hermes devised a new plan. He approached the cave boldly, not as a warrior, but as a humble traveler. He carried a set of shepherd's pipes, known as the panpipes, and began to play a melody so enchanting and mournful that it captivated the all-seeing Argus. The monster, intrigued by the beautiful music, invited Hermes to sit with him, his many eyes fixed on the god's nimble fingers. As Hermes continued to play, he began to spin a tale, a story about the origin of the very instrument he held. He spoke of Pan, the goat-footed god of the wild, a deity of boisterous joy who was easily roused to a bad temper. Hermes wove a narrative of Pan's unquenchable lust and his pursuit of the beautiful wood nymph Syrinx, a devout follower of the goddess Artemis, who had sworn off all men. Pan chased Syrinx to the bank of a river, but as he was about to catch her, she called upon the river nymphs for help. In a moment of divine intervention, Syrinx was transformed into a bundle of reeds. Heartbroken, Pan gathered the reeds, cut them to different lengths, and bound them together, creating the first set of panpipes, an instrument that would forever mourn his lost love. Hermes' tale was so long, so hypnotic, and so perfectly delivered that it finally accomplished the impossible. One by one, Argus's 100 eyes began to close, heavy with the weight of the story and the soothing music. When every single eye had finally shut, Hermes, a god of lightning-fast action, drew his sword, and in a swift and decisive strike, ended the life of the all-seeing monster. He had freed Io, but Hera, in her boundless wrath, would not be so easily defeated. She collected the 100 eyes of her slain guardian and, in an act of eternal remembrance and vanity, placed them on the tail feathers of her favorite bird, the peacock. And so, the peacock, with its stunning, multi-eyed tail, became a living, breathing testament to a goddess's unrelenting jealousy and a mortal's tragic fate. In the ancient world, where the boundaries between mortal and divine were thin as a whisper, there existed a goddess who was the very soul of the earth. Her name was Demeter, a gentle deity whose power was not of the sword or of the storm, but of the fertile ground and the sacred bonds of marriage. She was the one who nurtured the wheat and the vine, who saw to it that the mortal world was fed and sustained, a benevolent force of order and plenty. Yet, even she could be roused to a terrible wrath. A youth named Erysichthon, in an act of sacrilege, dared to fell a towering tree from her most sacred grove. Demeter, in her silent fury, cursed him with an unquenchable, maddening hunger. He ate till his wealth was gone and his family disowned him. A gaunt, hollow man, perpetually starving, a living testament to the vengeance of a wronged goddess. But Demeter's greatest love was not for her harvest, but for her daughter, Kor, a radiant maiden who embodied the fleeting beauty of spring, while Kor was a vision of innocence and light. She was unknowingly watched by another, a god of silent dominion and shadows. Hades, the grim lord of the underworld, had caught a glimpse of her reflection in a placid lake. He was not a god of reckless passion, but of deep, profound possession, and he fell instantly and irrevocably in love. He journeyed to the gleaming heights of Olympus to ask his brother, Zeus, for Kor's hand. Zeus, a deity of constant complications, gave his vague, non-committal blessing and promptly forgot all about it. Hades, however, was a god who acted on his own counsel. One day, as Kor was in a sun-drenched meadow in Sicily, gathering the most vibrant flowers, the earth beneath her feet began to groan. A chasm, black as a starless night, ripped the ground apart, and from it, a hand of immense power reached out, pulling the screaming maiden down into the cold embrace of the underworld. The world above her, so full of light, vanished in an instant. Her name, Kor, faded, and she became Persephone, the queen of the underworld. The world above was plunged into mourning. Demeter, consumed by a grief that transcended all reason, tore off her regal robes and wandered the earth, her sorrow changing her very appearance. For 9 days and 9 nights, she searched relentlessly, her heart a raw wound. In her desperate search, she finally sought out Helios, the sun god who sees all that transpires on the earth. Helios, in his honesty, revealed the grim truth. Hades had taken her daughter, and she was now the ruler of the realm of the dead. Filled with a vengeful despair, Demeter returned to Olympus and demanded her daughter's release. But Zeus, ever the pragmatist, offered a grim condition. If Persephone had consumed any food from the underworld, she would be eternally bound to it. Demeter's love was too fierce to be denied. In an act of defiance, she declared that the earth would produce nothing. The fields withered, the trees grew barren, and a terrible famine descended upon humanity. The very fabric of life was at risk. The gods, watching humanity starve, intervened. The situation was too dire to ignore. Hermes was dispatched to the underworld to bargain for Persephone's return. Hades, while he loved his queen, was a god of order and balance. Hermes, in a stroke of brilliant rhetoric, convinced him that without humanity, there would be no more souls for his kingdom. There would be no death itself. Hades, a god of his word, agreed to let Persephone go. But as she prepared for her return, one of his gardeners, Asclephalos, revealed the dreadful truth. Persephone had eaten 7 small pomegranate seeds, the food of the dead. This act, so simple and yet so consequential, sealed her fate. Asclephalos, in his eagerness to please his master, followed Persephone to the surface and made her crime known to the world. Persephone, in her honesty, admitted to consuming the seeds. Demeter, in a moment of agonizing clarity, realized that the ancient laws were unbending. Her daughter was not truly free. The gods, seeing their collective dilemma, convened to find a solution that would honor both Demeter's love and the unbreakable laws of the underworld. A compromise was struck. For 6 months of the year, Persephone would walk the earth, bringing with her the spring and summer that her mother's joy created. And for the other 6 months, she would return to her husband, Hades, in the underworld, and the earth would fall into the cold, quiet despair of autumn and winter.